everybody, Sean O'Connor here from Macabre Daily, specifically the Paper Cuts column, where I am so fortunate to get horror's best and brightest and most dynamic, and in this case, most handsome authors to join me to talk about their books and all things horror. Today I have Johnny Compton in the house. Johnny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for that wonderful intro right there. That was amazing already.
Spot the lie, my friend. All right. I just told Johnny, this is the most painful part of the recording is that I always go to the author's website and I literally read their about, but it's succinct and it's everything that you're known for. So here we go. Johnny Compton is a Stoker Award nominated author whose short stories have appeared in Pseudopod, Strange Horizons, the No Sleep Podcast, and several other publications. His fascination with frightening fiction started when he was introduced to the ghost story, The Golden Arm. We'll get into that, Johnny, as a child. He is the author of Despite House, Reddit Loved It, Devils Kill Devils on my TBR, and of course, Dead First, which we're going to talk about today. And I'm not even going to look, I'm not even going to keep you on pins and needles. I friggin' love this book. I already yelled at Johnny that it scared me. As well as the short story collection Midnight Somewhere, and then there is an announcement of a horror sci-fi, and I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger until later in the episode, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I've got a lot going on, man.
I mean, talk about a slacker. What have you done lately, Johnny?
I mean, I've definitely got my first book came out in my early 40s. I'm now in my mid 40s, so it took me somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years to kind of have that breakthrough. So now I'm trying to make up for lost time.
All right, I'll ask you though, looking back on those 20 years where you're grinding it out and you're writing and you're passionate about it, do you feel like, boy, I wish it had hit sooner, or I kind of needed that seasoning of life and maturity to become the writer that I am today?
A little bit of both. I'm glad that it didn't happen, when I was 22, because that's not my best writing. That's not my best work. I've got some of those still in the archives, and I go back and visit it, and I'll see a line or two that I can pull out, and I'm like, there was promise here. But it's like, one line that I can pull out, and then 10 lines that I'm like, if anybody ever sees this, I'm going to crawl into a hole and die.
And I always feel like, I'll just speak for myself, but the advance money would have ended up on the top of a bar somewhere.
Oh man, oh God, yeah. Like I was definitely drinking a lot more when I was younger, so the advance money would have, who knows where it would have gone. Definitely wouldn't have been saved.
Would have been a good time though. Yeah.
It would have been, I would have had some interesting stories to tell. I definitely, oh gosh, especially when I was younger and I was like way more like enamored of the idea of like, I want to like write horror, but I want to like live a Hemingway lifestyle or something, or all the old authors I used to read about, even like people from like the Harlem Renaissance. It's like, there'll be some value because I would do some traveling. If I had like, had a breakthrough like that, but also the traveling would have been like, I could tell you every bar as opposed to every museum.
Yeah.
In some great place that I went to, is like I could tell you all the good trashy bars, like not the high class places. I could tell you the seedy bar locations. I can give you that map to any place I've been to.
Tempt me with a good time, why don't you? All right, you know
I was gonna say, as I'm saying this, I'm still kind of nostalgic for this idea.
I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to contact some publishers, Johnny Compton, Sean O'Connor, and their guide to trashy, seedy bars. And they have to be haunted.
Exactly. Just give it some kind of horror spin, some kind of scary spin. You know what? I think this is a good idea.
We're putting it out into the ether. I love it. Oh, all right. Let's start from the beginning, because you mentioned it in your biography there that as a child you came across this short story. So I always start off with all of my guests asking them what their horror origin is, because I'm always fascinated and I'm really tickled sometimes. I know this isn't going to be the case with you, but sometimes I find out that an award-winning horror director or actor or writer, they didn't get into horror until well later in life. What's your story?
The story's much earlier in life. In Mississippi, when I was 5 years old, had just moved to Mississippi from my parents' military. I'm actually at my parents' house right now, by the way. So all these cool books you see behind me, all the
I
books.
love them.
This is not my library, unfortunately.
It's gorgeous, though.
This well put together. Mine is like more books piled up on the floor. Anyway, They were stationed in Hawaii initially. We moved to Mississippi in kindergarten in the 80s. I'm sure they don't do this in kindergartens anymore, but my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Nina, who I'll never forget, played for us the record, The Golden Arm, in class. And so The Golden Arm is this vintage, classic, old school ghost story. It's appeared in like a lot of different places, relatively recent years. Sam Raimi did an adaptation of it for I forget the name of, it's Quibi, I think it was, the
Oh yeah.
very short-lived streaming service. There was an episode of Andy Griffith where Andy Griffith told the story. Mark Twain used to tell it, and it's just the old school. Somebody's buried with a certain artifact. Somebody digs up that artifact and steals it, and now they return from the grave to get it, and they stalk them through the night, and the ghost is calling out, "Who's got my golden arm?" And I'm like 5 years old hearing this, and I'll never forget. And it's just, I mean, imagine like a group of 5-year-olds, kindergarten kids, and
Yeah.
we're all just dead silent and just transfixed. And some part of me from then on knew, I love these kind of stories. I love ghost stories. I love horror fiction from then on, and horror lore, and like places that are allegedly haunted. I couldn't get enough of it. It is like between that and like dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are like kind of standard for most boys in the 80s, especially at the time. Those two things. It was like if I wasn't reading about dinosaurs, I was reading about ghosts, monsters, cryptids, allegedly spooky locations, mysterious disappearances, anything spooky, eerie, unexplained. I wanted a part of it, and it started then.
Johnny, you and I are separated at birth. You just told me my horror origin story. Mine was Ray Bradbury, but it was the same thing. I was
Oh,
obsessed with dinosaurs. I was obsessed with all sorts of folklore. We used to go back and forth because my mom is Irish from Ireland. So we used to go back and forth to Ireland every year so we could visit family. And every single square inch of that beautiful place is haunted. And everyone comes out of the woodwork to tell you about it. So I feel like maybe it's a good thing that I gravitated toward it like yourself, because I don't know that I had much of a choice. But isn't it fascinating that at such a young age that we just gravitate towards it? It draws us in. There are so many people that I know and in my life that are like, I can't run far enough away from it. And here you and I are, and we're seeking it out. I just think it's the best thing ever.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not going to say Mississippi is as rich with scary lore as Ireland is.
Could be.
Banshees, the concept of the banshee is one of the first things I remember too. Like as I started reading about ghost stories, and then I forget what book I read where I encountered it, but I was like, this sounds spooky as hell. And this one of the many things that would keep me up in the dead of night. Like you hear anything in the distance in your room, just like, was that the scream? Was
Yep.
that the scream of a banshee? And it's like nothing remotely close to it. But in my brain, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I think I heard it? And then Mississippi itself, when I was there, it's similar to your experience with Ireland. It's just fostered it because you're surrounded by it. I lived in Ocean Springs near the coast. There's a river there they call the Singing River because I forget which nation, First Nations peoples this is associated with, but the legend is, as I recall it, and forgive me if I'm getting any of this mistaken or oversimplified, but as I recall people saying it, basically there were two nations fighting each other. One overwhelmed the other. And so the other, instead of surrendering, all of their people kind of gathered together, singing a song, and marched into the river to drown themselves as opposed to being subjugated. And they say the river still sings. You can still hear
Oh,
their song. And I remember hearing that, after I'd heard the Golden Arm. And then it's like, you live right near the singing river. And basically, like, this thing is like still singing with these spirits, these people. You can still hear their songs, supposedly. And it's just like, okay. Like, so I don't have to even, I can read about stuff from a world away, like the Banshees. I can read about stuff that's an ocean away from me, but also I can hear stories
yeah.
about something that is like, I could conceivably go visit this. And we had a lot of there's a specific ghost story that I've been dying to share that I actually put in Dead First. I modified it, of course, but you've read Dead First, obviously. So
Yeah.
the hospital scene was inspired by something from my childhood.
Okay, don't you dare spoil anything because we
I
want
won't.
every
I won't.
single
I
person
won't.
to go out and get this damn book. It's so good. But yeah, okay. I hear you. I hear you. I
I'll tell
get
you
it.
about it off. I can give you the details offline later.
Good.
That'll just be between me and you.
But this is all right. I'm going to pay you the highest compliment that as a child, you hear these stories and you learn the folklore and you become obsessive about it in a healthy way, or maybe not. I don't know, but either way, it just becomes your everything, and it's like you vibrate almost. You're at that age where you're unencumbered with life. So you can really lean into it. I read a novel like Dead First, and it brings me back to that moment where I really do vibrate. People right now, they're going to read the article and they're going to be making comments on YouTube. And when this is in podcast form, I'm sure the comment section is going to be lit up right now. But it's true. You vibrate with it, and you give me that ability to time travel back to being a
No,
kid and have those experiences unencumbered. And I thank you for it.
I mean that's maybe literally the highest compliment I've ever received
It's true.
because that is the sensation I'm constantly chasing. Constantly chasing is basically the way I felt about horror. I still love it obviously to pieces, but like you said, there's a frequency, the vibration you talked about
Yeah.
that you have when I first encountered it when I was a 5 year old. And then it was like it kind of comes in waves and ebbs and flows, and then you get to like middle school, high school, and it's like, okay, now I'm like thinking about girls and I'm on a
Yeah.
sports team and like some of this stuff goes by the wayside. But then I remember re recapturing that, like
Comes
basically
back around.
right out of high school, the internet starts to really become a genuine thing for me. I go to college, I'm learning about searching online, and of course, instead of studying, I'm finding out like I can like basically go look up a bunch of different stuff about horror films from overseas, and this is how I like find out about like Dario Argento and Mario Bava, and right around this is like somewhere in 1999 or so, like people start spreading these online, not rumors. There's these stories going around. There's this crazy movie called The Blair Witch Project that you got to prepare yourself for, and at the same time, around this same time this is happening, it's like, hey, there's this movie out of Japan called Ringu. you
Right?
guys like you guys got to brace yourselves for when this comes to America. And it's like the buzz, that feeling, like you said, that energy, that vibration. And it's like then all of a sudden I literally could chase it. It was like kind of this nostalgic, perfect dreamscape of the internet at the time where it was like everything's at your fingertips, but not in your grasp.
Yep.
Like you have to still hunt stuff down.
Hmm.
And the hunt is part of the fun. And it was like, how do I find out more about what to get, and how do I go about buying it? Sometimes like the earliest days of eBay, and it's like, can I get a DVD that's going to be the right region to play on the DVDs that we have here in the States, and is it going to be subtitled correctly? Anyway,
But it's
I'm
that
always
chase.
chasing that.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's like, and then so it's always going to ebb and flow, but you find different things that rekindle it for you. And I'm always in search of that feeling. So you saying that my book gave you that, I mean, that's I can't thank you enough for saying that. I'm glad that it connected with you on that level, because that's, if I can do that for somebody, then I know I'm giving them the sensation that I'm always searching
Well,
for.
you did it. You earned every word of that compliment because you absolutely did it. And I'll go one step further is that, you know, your novels and horror novels in general, they're like this treasure box because there's always something that I can find in there that I was unaware of, whether it be curses or cults or demons and possession. And it's always something that will start that, like it's like lighting the fuse of the, aging myself here, but the beginning of Mission Impossible when the fuse gets lit and takes off. And I'll chase that. And, sometime at the detriment of, friends, family, and my job, but I will chase it. And I really do love that. And I shouldn't look. Of course, I love the horror genre, but I will say this about literature in general: we need it. You have to have it. You have to have the arts. You have to have culture because it does open up these portals to different dimensions. And I know I'm getting all wonky here, but it's the truth.
It's absolutely the truth. It's, I feel like the people I've met over time, I'm not saying everybody who's like an avid reader is necessarily a good person. It is harder to be like a lousy person if you read a lot, though. I truly believe, like, if you're reading a lot of fiction and you're like really diving into it,
I co-sign that, by the way. We'll go down
it's like,
together. I co-sign on that.
yeah, it's still possible to be like a crummy person, but you got to really work at it at
You
that
do.
point. Like, you've got to be dedicated to the concept because it opens your mind up to so many different. The purpose of it is to open your mind
And you're
to
showing a
different
curiosity
perspectives.
that's so
Yes,
lacking these days. It's going to
yes.
come back. It's going to come back. I'm not going to be doom and gloom all the
No,
time.
I'm
It's going to
with
come
you.
back.
I'm much more of an optimist. I see there's something in the world that beats it out of people.
Mm.
But like I still try to even engage as much as I can online. I'm in my mid 40s, like all this stuff is much more geared toward a younger audience. But like when I look at what young people are into as far as like internet fiction and the density of it, and people talk about your attention spans getting lowered, and then meanwhile I'm looking at some of the stories that get told,
Right.
like even like something like Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm like the lore
The lore.
when the movies came out, all the people that are into it are like one of their biggest complaints were like it's not going into this and it's not going into that, and I'm like you got to keep track of all this. Listen, when I was a kid, the horror for kids that was available to me, as much as I love it and it influenced me hugely, it didn't require you to track this much actual storytelling.
It didn't.
There is a demand on your attention span and on your focus there. So, but we need to lean into the positives of those kind of things and then try to encourage people to stick with that. There's a natural desire for that curiosity and that want to know. I think that's there early. Something in the rest of the world beats it out of you as you get older, but for those of us that maintain it, I think it's obviously we're in a great place, but it's also on us a little bit to encourage others that we see it in, maintain that whatever it is that you're into, even if I don't get it, it's not about whether I get it, you get it, and I see the value of what you get, and this is
Foster it
going
and
to.
support it. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
It's funny because the authors, authors in general just are doing the hard yards and they're doing great work and they're creating the novels and the short stories and the collections, the poetry, all of it. It's there for everyone. But I do, just to break my arm, patting myself on the back for one quick moment, I do an offshoot of the Paper Cuts column called the Spotlight series, where I interview podcasters and librarians because those are truly the people that are doing incredible work but don't really get the recognition whatsoever. So I just had Conrad Stump and Becky Spratford, who's having like the most
Mm-hmm.
incredible time right now, and she deserves every moment of it. They both do. And these are people that actually really amplify authors and make the works accessible. And I'm just trying to shout them out as much as possible, just like yourself, because this is really great. And well, I'm not going to get to it yet. I'm not going to get to it yet. We stopped in Mississippi. So you're there. We've got your horror origin for the most part. When does it all then culminate into Johnny Compton sitting down and starting to write?
I mean, I tried my first short stories when I was in fifth grade, so 10 years old.
Okay.
They were surprisingly terrible. Unsurprisingly, actually, I was 10 years old,
I'll be the
and
judge of
but
that. I want to see them.
I do remember though my fifth grade teacher, Sister Gail. I went to a Catholic school at the time, and there was a writing contest, and I'd submitted my story to a writing contest, and it was awful in myriad ways. But I do remember her, and this is why she's one of the teachers I dedicated The Spite House to, my first book. I remember her basically telling me like, "You are capable of better than this." So it wasn't just like, "Oh, this is bad." It was like, "You're good enough to get better, but
Push you along. Yeah.
you're not doing what you need to be doing." So then that stuck in my brain, and then by the time I got to high school, I had another teacher, and it was more in the essay space, but he was like, "You're a good writer, you're just not applying yourself." And this was back when you were writing essays by hand.
Yep.
And I remember turning in an essay to him at one point that he gave me a B on, and he was like, "This would be an A, but you just totally rushed the last part." And you know how I know that you rushed the last part? Because the part that was good was written in black ink, and the rest of it was written in blue ink. And he's like, "So when did you write the rest of this? Like on the bus here?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's actually pretty impressive."
Outside my
But
locker.
also,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like, "That's pretty impressive, but also like just focus up and do better." And so these kind of things stuck with me. And then pretty much immediately out of high school, I started trying to in college. I really wanted to like sit down, try to write fiction, write stories, revisit this thing that I started when I was 10 years old, and just kind of built from it from there, and plugged away. And then I sold my first short story, I think, when I was like 22 or 23.
Okay.
And that kind of really changed. I'd already written several prior to that, but
But
the
you're
first
like,
time
I can do this. Like I have a
somebody wants
foothold.
to pay me for it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't prorate or anything like that, but it's still like, wow, somebody like is like, here's $50. I liked your story that much, which is like
Yeah.
unreal. Like that
Yeah.
sensation of like, hey, like we really like your story. We're going to give you some money for it. It's like unbelievable in your head. And it also, again, it keeps the ignition going, and it keeps things in sight in terms of like, okay, like I'm good enough, but I can get better.
Yeah.
Now this is just the beginning of it. And so kind of getting that, but then resetting and saying, okay, I got to push harder and go for more and go for more. And then I've just had these ideas swarming in my head for however many years now anyway. So it's like, even if the well dried up tomorrow, as far as like people wanting to read from me, I would still be writing because I have no choice at this point.
Yeah,
Like I
you
have to
don't.
get these ideas out. I have no choice.
Hey, look, don't scare me like that. You better keep writing, all right? I didn't want to hear
I
these
mean,
words
no,
come out of your mouth.
I'll keep writing, and if nobody buys it, I'll send you a copy. If nothing else, I'll always like send. I'll keep you aware.
And look, it'll be like you're back in Catholic school. I'll give you 1 or 2 gold stars. All right.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, listen, I unsurprisingly, I say unsurprisingly, but I had an interesting experience with like the Catholic school I was at, in like my relationship with horror, because I maintain, I've mentioned this to people before. Nuns are not afraid of the devil, and so it's like a lot of the horror books that I loved reading growing up were things I either got at the Scholastic Book Fair there, and they didn't try to ban it or anything along those lines,
Mm-hmm.
and they were at the library.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like they would, the elementary school, especially I was at, they would have like every year a Halloween costume contest. And it wasn't like nobody can dress up as anything scary or ghoulish or anything like that. It was like, because the nuns were like, look, man, let the devil show up here, and we're going to unleash, like, we're going to put our yardsticks in the shape of a cross and then beat Satan to death with it.
They
So they're
lean
not
into
afraid
the
of the
horror.
horror.
They
Yeah,
lean
exactly.
into the horror. Yeah.
It's just kind of fascinating, because then you see certain other religious groups or what have you that have like been like, no, you can't do any of this. This is of the devil. And meanwhile, like the ones I grew up around, at least in Mississippi, were like almost encouraging you, like, no, yeah, watch The Exorcist, because basically for them it's a documentary.
Yeah.
It's like, see, this is what happens when you fool around Ouija boards.
And
This,
they
you
know they're
should
going to see
watch
you
it.
on Sunday in the
Hmm.
third pew. Yep.
This is gonna scare the God into you.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Yeah.
It backfired with us because I went to Catholic school as well. So we were both like, this is awesome.
I can't
I make this my
get
life.
enough of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that brings us to Dead First. Let's talk about the novel. I want to start with, where did the idea come from? Because I have so many questions, but let's start there.
I I've had this idea for, I can't even think of how many years at this point, but I had this idea of just I wanted to write a horror detective novel, and just trying to think of what could be an interesting thing that would be, what would be something fascinating for somebody to investigate that hasn't really been mined a lot before. I didn't want to do, not that I have anything against these things. I think these are awesome, but it's kind of like, oh, there's always like a book, you know, this mysterious book, or this person is missing, or something like that. And I was like, okay. And then that leads you to find out the spookiness. You go to this town, etc. I was like, what can I do that's a little bit off kilter? And at some point, I don't know exactly how it hit me, but the the early days of this, not being the title, but I have like a spreadsheet where I keep all my ideas, and I literally called it like the case of the stolen mortality,
Which
kind
is
of like an old
so
Nancy
good.
Drew Hardy Boys, because I grew up around. By the way, I've got three older brothers, and they had like a bunch of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys books, and those always scared me. And they were always kind of titled like something like that, "The Case of the This." And it was always like vaguely spooky on the covers. They're all mystery books. They're not really horror, but they all look like they're about to go into like a haunted house or
And
something.
there's always one light on, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's gloomy and bluish, and it's night, and it's dark, and it's like always just like a little bit creepy. And so I was like, okay, I wanted to kind of like, I had that idea. And then obviously I knew that wasn't going to be the main title, but I was like, this is the working, kind of concept. And so from there, it was like, okay, what do I mean by that? Like, and then it was like, okay, this private detective gets hired by an eccentric billionaire who demonstrates and tells them, I can't die. And here's the proof that I can't die, but I don't know why. And I need to know why.
And
And kind of
this
take
was the
off running
moment
from
where I
there.
was like, I have to see this movie on this book on the screen. I have to, because it's so jarring and it's so well written and visual. I know this is overused, but your style is so cinematic. It's so easy to play the movie in your head when you're reading your fiction. But I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you
Go.
off. But that chapter, oh, it's so, and it's in the beginning. We're not spoiling anything. It's
No,
way early.
this is
Yeah.
I've the last two books have led off, I think, with some pretty outlandish opening chapters. And then like I do like the idea of like setting the pace with something like that, and then it's a challenge to myself and a challenge to the reader of like how much more insane is this going to get if this is where it opens? Because you don't want to fall into that trap of like this is the coolest opening, and then the rest of it kind of falls flat after.
Oh, that is not the
Um,
case here, but it is the
yeah,
coolest opening.
thank you, thank you. And so yeah, that was the genesis of the idea. Originally, the detective I had was a very different person. They were basically me.
Okay.
And I've set a rule for myself that anytime I sense like I've written a character that I feel like is too much like me, try to go in the opposite direction. I was much younger when, like I said, I thought of the idea. I probably thought of this idea when I was like in my early 30s. And it was like, oh, like the detective is a prematurely balding black male, tall. And it was like, okay, this guy is very obviously you. So then it was like, what can not be me? It was like, all right, like let's go, with a woman, and like kind of going from there. And it was like, this is my way of forcing myself not to self-insert into my fiction. It's like, how do I make this person as different from me within reason as like kind of possible?
Shyla's great though. She's so layered. I love a protagonist with a secret, you know?
Hmm.
And I think look, Dead First works on so many different levels. You could take the supernatural element out of it, and it is a banger of a noir whodunit. And conversely, you could take the mystery out of it, and it is a banger of a horror novel. But it's like you got your chocolate and my peanut butter there, and it's delicious. I mean, get the best of both worlds. But I have to ask you because we have the Spite House, and we've got haunted houses, and we've got possession and demons, and now we have cults and stolen mortality, and your horror is distinctly different novel to novel to novel. So is that purposeful, or just you have this treasure trove to draw from because you've been thinking of these ideas for the last 20 years?
I mean, it's both. It was very deliberate. I had a 4 book plan in mind.
Okay,
Um,
I'm listening.
when I first got signed, it was like I'm going to do my haunted house novel. I want to do like kind of my monsters, devils, vampire novel. I'm going to do my this one. I don't want to spoil what it gets into, but it's a different category, like you said, and it gets into cults. Like we can
Yeah.
say that safely. I'm writing a 4th one right now that is a little bit more of a serial killer, kind of twisty vibe, serial killer urban legend book. And that
Oh,
was like these were my 4 books that I had in mind as the plan. And I remember mentioning this at the first event that I ever got invited to. And Cynthia Pelayo, who I love to pieces, was there.
What a
And when I
gem.
mentioned that, wonderful. And when I mentioned that to her, she was like, like that's kind of crazy. Like no, like writers don't really have this far ahead. A lot of them, guess I should say, apparently don't think this far ahead.
I haven't
And she said
encountered
it.
it.
And she said it in a very encouraging way, though. She was like, "This is like really cool," but also, and when I would mention it to other people, they were like, "So you're really thinking this far ahead?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I, like you said, I have a treasure trove of ideas to pull from that have been kind of stuck in traffic, for lack of a better term, and now they have an off ramp that they can go on to now. But also, I really love the variety that's found in the genre. Like when we sat down and talked about when I saw the posters behind you, there's like the Hammer horror stories, and I love Hammer horror. I grew up around slashers, in the 80s. I love haunted houses. Um, I love sci-fi horror. My favorite horror movie is Alien, and I think John Carpenter, who's my favorite director, definitely favorite horror director, probably favorite overall director. My personal pick for his best movie is The Thing. So I think sci-fi horror is incredible. And so I love just this huge range that horror has. And it's the approach I basically had was I shouldn't probably think this way. I think sometimes pessimistically of myself, but it's like I don't know how many more opportunities I'm going to get. I don't know if this is the last contract I'm going to get to write a book. Who knows what may happen tomorrow? People might just hate my writing. They might go out of style, whatever.
I don't believe that, but I
So
think it's a healthy way to think so that you have that fire burning.
right. And
Yeah.
so then it's like I got to seize these opportunities and I want to be able to showcase the range as much as possible. And then if it gets to a space where I do start feeling comfortable in a good way, not in a I'm going to rest on my laurels kind of way, then I might start looking at let's revisit some of these things I've done previously. Um Not to give away too much of Dead First, but I would definitely revisit this universe, let's say.
Oh, I like
Um
hearing that.
but I want to be sure that I'm in a space where it makes sense for me to do so if I did that. That said, I do already have an idea for potentially revisiting let's say whoever it is that may or may not survive in this story.
I'm not saying.
I would love to bring them back around potentially for a future story. So we'll see how that goes.
There's so much fertile ground to be mined here, which I think is great. You are fantastic at world building. I love your setting. I love your characterization. I love the way they both interplay. I think Texas is a character in this book. You know,
Yes, very much.
so and again, I have to watch my big mouth, even though I have the ability to edit things out. I don't want to spoil anything. We go to places, and I'm purposely going to be very vague. We go to places physical and kind of out there in this novel that are so well detailed that even the most jaded horror reader will the hair on the back of the neck is going to stand up because that's what happens to us. We just gorge ourselves on horror fiction so we can kind of, it's like a beach glass. It wears down after a while. Man, oh man, do you sharpen these edges back up? Oh, Johnny, seriously. I can't wait to write the review for this. Again, there won't be any spoilers, but we're starting 2026 off in a very exciting way, and you are a huge part of that. 2025 was a phenomenal year in horror, as was 24 and 23 and 22. We are building upon this decade that rivals the monumental horror novel and horror literature decades of the past. But there are more diverse voices. There are more diverse characters. There are more, there are more places to go than what we had previously in the 80s. And I love that. Absolutely love it.
I think it truly, genuinely enriches the genre so much
It does.
to have the various voices that we have, and people can draw on different cultures and different experiences and different places. So much of horror is, to me, surprising. As much as I love the genre, it feels surprisingly underexplored as far as the possibilities. Like you said, even Texas being such a character in this book,
Yeah.
and in the Spite House, I deliberately said it in the Texas Hill Country because I feel like people from outside of Texas don't even know the Hill Country exists.
No.
And when people think of Texas in fiction, it's either one of the big cities, maybe, or basically West Texas. And there's nothing wrong with setting a story in West Texas, but it's like the desert land. Or if you read Joe Lansdale, the legendary Joe Lansdale, then you might be more familiar with East Texas, but you might feel like that's almost a place that he invented because he's Joe Lansdale. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, he's drawing on a real place. But it's like people, I think when you think of fictional Texas, you're not thinking of some of these areas. And I took it from San Antonio into small town Texas down to the coasts. Like you said, we go to a lot of different places. We explore things that are sometimes very much rooted in reality with a twist, sometimes things that are more here's a sprinkling of reality mixed in with something I invented entirely, and then kind of a hybrid of the two. But there's a lot of this where if you're like, I wonder if this is a real place, if you Google it, or if this is based on a real thing, you Google it, you'll find something adjacent, maybe not the exact thing. And I kind of like that idea of creating something that feels, again, to me, for horror, I feel like I'm chasing that thing as a kid. And for me, it was like there's a secret world. And to me,
Yes.
that's like what I get to do. It's like if I invent something that feels close, it's like, oh, this is like almost like a shadow version of it. And it feels more fun to me to make up, like, again, we're not spoiling anything here, but there's certain events that take place at a hotel. Well, I basically made up the hotel, but I've rooted it in some inspiration of things that are real around San Antonio. But to me, it feels like something that could. I want to write something that feels like it could grow into like its own weird little legend. Like, did you know that there's this like secret hotel in San Antonio? It's hard to find. You go downtown, and if you get lost, you might stumble into it. I want you to kind of feel like I want people to be saying that like 20 years from now, like, oh no, I thought he based this on a real place, but it's like it's no longer here. And I want it to feel like
You're creating
eerie.
urban legends.
Would love to create an urban legend around stuff like that because that to me is like when I was a kid in Mississippi and it was like, hey, did you hear about this graveyard that is there, or did you hear about this house that's supposed to be in the woods in the park near our houses in this neighborhood? There's allegedly this house that's hidden back there, but if you go see it, if you go find it, you'll never be seen again. And it's like, well, urban legends don't make sense, right? It's like, how does anybody know that nobody's ever seen again if they see it?
Right?
Because nobody's coming back, allegedly, right? But that's the fun. And it's like, I love the idea of creating a world that feels a bit like that, where it's like, oh, this feels like it was reality, but just a little bit off kilter. It's like that sensation from childhood that I'm always looking for.
It's funny that you say that. I interviewed Erica T. Worth not that long ago, and we were talking about the haunting in room 904, and she's got a very specific hotel. And she said the same thing. Like, look, this is based on a real place, but what I do in the interior is completely my own. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
draw from
Mm-hmm.
it. It's the generator that I'm drawing power from. But once I get in there, all bets are off. And I just have like, I just start creating. And I just think that's wonderful. I'm so jealous of you writers.
I mean, but it's like I love that you mentioned like Erica's got her own perspective on it, and like going back to what you said, we're in this new era, I think, and I've talked to and listened to so many of the elder statesmen horror authors, and so many of them have been nervous about like if is this going to collapse because they were there for the boom in the
And
80s,
then the
70s, and
bust.
80s, and then
Yeah,
the bust. And I think the thing, going back to what you said, like the diversity of voices, I think that that's going to help support it
I agree.
because of this realization now that you're going to get all these different perspectives. And it's not even just strictly about different cultures and different other backgrounds, which all that matters too, but it's just literally the perspective of we can always add something and inject something fresh to the genre. We have people that are able to do that, and we've seen it sustained enough now, being taken more seriously now than I think it really ever has been in the past. You and I are
Completely agree.
both old enough to remember. I remember when Barnes and Noble didn't have a horror section,
Right?
and it's like now it's there, and it's like
Johnny, I
this is
remember
really
when it
cool.
was there and then it wasn't. And then when it
You know
came
what I mean?
back, I almost cried.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing, and it's. I remember when the entire horror section when I would go to B. Dalton or Walden Books in the mall. They would have a horror section, which is great, but it would be like so kind of the same books over and over, and
Yeah.
more power to them. But also, it's kind of like, man, nobody's got anything else going on. It just felt so like specifically limited. And then, meanwhile, nowadays, I've got two different friends in within less than an hour or an hour or so driving distance from me who have horror bookstores. And I'm like, horror bookstores definitely didn't exist near me when I was younger because I would have lived there.
Right?
I would have found them and I would have never moved. I would have never gotten out of there. So just the idea that now we have the genre is so amazing that my friend Max Booth can not only open a store in San Antonio, but when a better location pops up in downtown,
Go there.
is doing well enough to move there. And so, and the store gets a grand reopening, and is doing even better now. And when I talk to Max, Max says, "Well, we're having a relatively slow day, but to be honest, if this had been the same day at the previous location, I'd be like, man, this is a
It's a
really good
great
day."
day. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
hearing this. This is what we're talking about. That and again, I'm cautiously optimistic because we did live through the boom and the bust. And the bust were some real dry years. And it's not that authors weren't there grinding it out and passionate about the work, but there just weren't enough outlets and there weren't the indie publishers. Now that world is growing exponentially and they're supporting each other. And I'm not going to say that hey, look, we're all human, by nature. So there's going to be a little bit of snipping and sniping here and there. But for the most part, the community is so supportive and they're so everyone seems to be on the same page about a rising tide lifts all boats, you know?
yeah, definitely. And there's that element, and there's also no longer a stigma, as much of a stigma, I guess I should say. I think there's still a little bit, but with associated with the word itself, the word horror,
Mm.
people are not afraid to call their work horror. Because I remember, as I'm sure you do, so many books that were like, well, this is labeled a supernatural thriller.
Yeah.
They would throw the thriller word, they would attach that to so many things where
Thriller
you're
with a
like, this sounds,
capital T, supernatural with a
yes,
tiny little S. Yeah.
yes. And it was like, this, I'm pretty sure this is just a horror story. It sounds like this is just a haunted house book. I think that's just a horror story. But the marketing was like, you can't use that H word because it's associated with lower quality. It's associated with nobody wants to read this.
Yeah.
And now we're at a stage where it's, oh, some of the most beloved books, some of the highest praise for authors, some people that are considered, um, you know, very respected in literary circles come from horror. And Demi Moore is being nominated for an Oscar for The Substance, which is like graphic body horror, like not even like subtle, like, well, it's a subdued type of horror, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I love myself some subdued horror,
But
but to
this
get
went there.
nominated for like, yes, like the grossest horror story, basically you could imagine being nominated for an Oscar. Like we're at, I think, this stage, and I do think it's crossed a threshold. Hopefully, like you said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I understand why some of the older folks in associated with the genre are still nervous about it, because once you get burned by something like the collapse that happened, you're always going to have your guard up.
Yeah.
But I do think we've passed the point where it's like an era or a phase
I agree.
necessarily, or a
We're
trend or
well
anything like
past that.
that.
Yeah.
I think we've reached a point now where like this has been sustained for however many years, where this is just the new normal of
This is
horror
mainstream
fiction.
now.
Is Yes, this is the respect it's going to garner. As I've been super proud of telling people, last year in 2025, like you said, a great year for horror, and movies always are kind of the barometer of pop culture when it comes to storytelling. The two biggest non IP, non sequel, not a remake, not an adaptation of anything else. The two biggest movies at the box office were Weapons and Sinners. So the two biggest original ideas at the box office by far that made the most money were two horror stories.
And they
And not even
actually
like
use the H word. The
they
media
used the
used the H word when they were talking about
leaned
him.
all the way, the marketing, everything about it leaned all the way into it, and like like old school style of horror too. It's not even like, well, this is elevated horror, we're trying to reinvent something. It was like, we've got a witchcraft story, we got a vampire story.
Yeah.
And you know what works is if you make the characters really good, and you make the story really good, and you make the scares really good.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about both of those movies. It's like they leaned hard into, we're gonna do some scary stuff, and like, or gross stuff, and we want people to come away from this not feeling like, oh, that was like horror that makes you think. Again, absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No,
But the very clear like objective of both was like, let's make sure people leave this feeling like they tried to scare the hell out of me. They
yeah,
tried to like really ratchet up the
and
intensity
they
and do something
did.
horrible here. And they did.
Yeah,
And like we want to give people images and moments where it's like this is embedded in my brain of like, oh man, this is creepy. I better watch out for this. I loved that.
it was such a phenomenal year because it really did transcend what is typically a great year for horror, but it's lower budget, maybe some indie stuff, maybe some studio stuff, but it's $25 million. These were major big budget movies that connected and audiences went, and then they realized, what's so much fun? Going to a fantastic horror movie and having that collective experience in a darkened theater where each and every heartbeat becomes one, you know?
It's like my literally. I've had some. I love going to the movies. Absolutely love going
Same.
to the movies. I've had some wonderful experiences watching comedies, watching action movies. I remember um, feeling my heart was stopping in my chest the first time I was in a theater watching a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the first big fight scene. And everybody in the theater, I was like, nobody said anything, but I was like, I can feel us all holding our breath at the same
It's
time.
that vibration
This,
again.
yes. Having said that, to this day, I think my favorite, most rambunctious, fun movie experience was with the first Paranormal Activity. That I saw it with the just a crowd that was like perfectly lively. Like they weren't shouting at the screen over or anything, but it was just like every time something seemingly scary, it was like screaming and then laughter mixed with the screaming, but like laughter of like, I'm so freaked out, like, oh
Yep.
my God, get out of the house, get away from this thing. And I was like, I can't believe how charged up this is. And when I think about how much fun I've had in a movie theater out of all the movies I've seen, I've had so much fun over like so many years now. I think about that moment and just like watching it with those people, especially for me, because at the time, I hadn't I'd had some short stories published, but I was nowhere near like, what I'm doing now. So I'm so lucky to do. But I was still like in my mind, it was like anytime I go to see a horror story, it's like, how do I do this to people? And then seeing that be so effective on people. And I'm like, I've seen a lot of these movies, so I'm like, I know where it's going, where the scares are going to happen. I'm not as surprised as some other people, but still seeing like, I'm like, damn, they're executing this so effectively, and watching how it's happening to other people, and I've just got this huge grin on my face the whole time, and I'm like clapping at
You
moments
see
when
the
it's like
blueprint. You see it.
yes. And I'm just like, oh, this is executed so well. And like the effect it's having on people is so great. And that to me is what, like you said, people are rediscovering
Yeah.
over these past several years. And I think it's last year was when it really like reached a certain crescendo of people like realizing, man, come to the movies. This is part of what horror is supposed to be there for. Come to the movies together, see this, everybody's vibrating on the same wavelength,
Yep.
got the same heartbeats connected, like you said, and it's just like we're all going to scream at the same time, and this is such a great community experience.
And not to oversell it and not to make it something more than what it is, but I truly believe this. Those communal experiences, they bring us together, and we need more of that. So when
Yes.
you can go into a darkened theater and have this cathartic experience where you just get scared silly, but then you leave and you have that laughter and everyone's filtering out into the hallway, and you feel it. Everyone's like, "What the hell just happened?" And they're kind of elated and floating a little bit. And there's to have those kind of moments, I really do feel connects us all as people. And to bring it back to you, that's what this book does. Now, with a novel, we don't have that darkened theater experience where we're all in one room together, but we do have that experience through the reading community where I read a novel like Dead First. And this is Johnny, I'm just going to tell you right now, this is a pass along book. So, and I always get him back though. I always get him back. I will hunt people down. I pass this along to my friends. I pass this along to someone I know is going to just jam out on this. And then they pass it along. And like I said, it comes back to me. So maybe we don't have that 2-3 hour experience in the darkened theater, but we but you are supplying that experience to horror readers. And this is a tether. And now we're all connected to Johnny Compton's Dead First, and we can talk about it and we can really groove on it. And that kind of, it exponentially grows the experience. But unlike a film where you kind of talk about it for the window that it's in theaters and maybe you bring it up down the line, but a book is kind of like it's this balloon that keeps getting air. So it lasts so much longer. And that's one of my favorite things about novels because we talk about them forever. Oh, Johnny, I can't hear you.
Oh no.
Now I
Can you
got
hear
you.
me now?
Got you
Okay.
now.
I must have accidentally phone down. There's a little knob here. My bad. Um, I've never joined a book club before, and then I recently started because I was invited to a different podcast at one point and was asked to speak about the Haunting of Hill House, which is one of my favorite. I mean, one of everybody's favorite books, basically.
So good.
And the charge up I got from being able to talk about this decades old novel and hearing different perspectives from other authors, and I'm adding something to it, and they're like, I never made this connection before.
Illuminating. Yeah.
and and like you said, it is just, you can, there's so much depth and richness in different people's perspectives of what they'll get out of it and how they connect with a certain character over another character, and jokes or little references you might pick up, all these different things. There's so much you can do
And you go
with,
back to it.
yes. And there's not as much as I again, I love film. There is a certain kind of technical barrier with in-depth film discussion to a certain degree, where it's
Yeah.
like, if I wanted to talk about this with some of my friends, they're not going to be. First of all, I need the immediate reference point. So, like, if I wanted to be able to be like, oh, but what he did here with the framing of the shot, and this character looms over this character in this kind of way, and yada yada, it's great and all, but like, some of them are just going to be like, can we just talk about the quotes?
Yeah.
Like, and the beauty of the book is like, this is the barrier is literacy. That's it. You don't have to be thinking like, oh well, this, the framing of this shot is actually a reference to this Cecil B. DeMille movie. And then the lighting here is a technique that was mastered by this guy, and I can tell he's referencing this and yada yada. If you want to like nerd out on that level with that, it's kind of like, okay, cool, I guess. Like, you're like a very specific nerd. I've burdened my spouse with some of these conversations before, and I could tell she's just looking at me like, whatever, dude. But with a book, then we can talk about it and be like, it's it's just the straight up like, oh, like the poetry of this line, or like the meaning of this character, and it's like,
And
there's no barrier of like, I need to know about filmmaking techniques and technical mastery.
Johnny, it could be as simple as I liked it and it scared me. And then it opens
Right.
up a conversation.
Right, right, 100%. So I think that depth, and like I love the metaphor you used of it's the balloon constantly filling with air, and it's just, it can go from person to person, and it's great for one-on-one conversations. It's great for group setting conversations. It's great for if you want to invite the author to speak about their book. I've been invited to people's book clubs. It's really cool to hear people's different perspectives. It's really cool to hear people tell you like, I wish you hadn't done this. And it's like, sometimes it's just like, well, why? And they're like, I don't know, it just upset me. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what
Okay.
I meant to do,
Sorry.
but I can appreciate that you wish I hadn't done it. That's kind of the objective sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
But you know that you
but
got
it's
him. You know you would listen to an
exactly,
emotion out of him. Yeah.
exactly. So, I mean, there are just so many different ways that I think that, and then, like you said, you don't get the community element of it, but there is something, especially with horror, that I think is so cool about a book, because it is just you one on one. It's kind of like you're trapped with this thing a little bit.
There's no safety net.
No, no, you can't
You
you can't
can't do
look away.
this.
Yeah, yeah. You can't look away, but it keeps going. You know what I mean? Like, you can look away, but you have to disengage completely.
Mm.
But like with a movie, it's like, I can like use you can cover your eyes, you can make the little finger shutters, and like, okay, this is the part that I don't want to see. I'm gonna like look over here or do something else, distract myself. You've got to lock in for the book for it to
Yeah.
keep going. you have to be the person who partakes. There's this weird, almost metafiction, fourth wall breaking element with a book. I mean, I've always wanted to look. I have a bit of a cruel bastard in me, you know. I
Meanwhile,
have
I'm like,
always,
this is the nicest man I've ever spoken to.
but there's because I love the idea of scaring people, man, with this stuff. I have always wanted to like sneak in, like not into every copy. I've always wished I could like sneak into like get famous enough that they'll let me like every like 1,000th copy or something sneak in like 2 pages that just speak directly to the reader in a book that otherwise is written ordinarily, and it's just like you, I'm talking to you, and then like have them be like, hey, did anybody else get to page like 200 and like this is
No,
happening, and they're like, don't know what the hell you're talking about. Everybody else is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And like I would just love to, but you would only be able to really do that with a book because it's one on one.
yeah, yeah,
It's there's this primal something about a book, and it's like you have to turn the page. You're the person that's like cranking the machine to keep it going. And like if I just the power of a book, if it's like scaring you, but it's like you're the person flipping the page. I've almost got you possessed.
yes.
Like I have you like you, and you're like, I have to keep reading this. It's scaring the hell out of me, but I also need to know what's going to happen next. And physically, I'm the person that's putting myself through this. And it's not, again, it's different from a movie where it's like the movie's
You're willfully
automatically going
doing
on
it.
its own. You're willfully putting yourself through this. So to get anybody to read anything is like in that when you think of it that way, it's like if you've got somebody that engaged with a book, it's already pretty amazing.
Yeah.
To get them to do it about something that they're feeling like I'm starting to feel queasy, I'm starting to feel a little nervous. I'm reading this alone at night and it's like making me
But you
scared, but I keep
can't
going.
stop.
It's like when I hear people talk about that, it's like I'm sure you can see my face. Like I probably sound psychotic to anybody
No,
listening to this right now.
I'm on your. We're on the
Oh,
same page because I'm like, you're torturing me, but I'm the one, and it's such a cliche, Johnny, but I'm the one who stayed up too late because I had to find out what happened in the next chapter. And my wife is like, you got to go read in the living room because I'm going to bed.
staying up too late to do it. And again, you're the one. You're the one doing it to yourself. It's not even like streaming where like people binge watch, but it's like the streamers will make the decision for you if you like just leave it on. It's like, hey, we're going to start playing this next episode for you. You've got to be the one to like physically like push a stop. Otherwise, we got you covered. No effort on your part. No, you have to
You
be the
have
one
to do it.
that keeps turning the page. And even when you know I should stop, I need to go to get some sleep.
No, I
You're
take it
like,
back. You are a cruel bastard. That's what you did to me. You're right. That's dead first, the Spite House, and I have not read Devils Kill Devils yet. But those two books, it's the same damn thing where I'm just like cruising through it. And I know it's such a cliche. And I know the viewers and then the listeners are like, ah, yeah, you say that all the time. I do not. If it wasn't the truth, I wouldn't bring it up. But yeah, you kept me up way too late and you scared the bejesus out of me. But I loved every second of it. And I willfully went there, and you're trying to do that as a writer. Mission accomplished, success. I'm trying to chase that vibration, that thrill as a reader, and look, success for me because I got it.
isn't that like a weird, twisty thing that we have as horror lovers? It's like if something didn't scare me enough, I wanted to still find the thing that's even scarier.
Yeah,
It's I mean, people have used the metaphor of it being a drug before. I don't want to downplay the idea of drug addiction by saying that. That said, there is something addictive. It's not detrimental,
but we
but
are
it is
chasing
we're
the
chasing
high.
it, and it's bizarre because we're chasing a high that we know that if it does what I want it to do, what I'm hoping it'll do. I mean, I remember, not to spoil anything, but there's a specific revelation in Mike Flanagan's adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House, the
Mhm.
aforementioned Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix series. There's a revelation that was like just heartbreakingly horrifying. It just devastated me, and I couldn't go to sleep. I had to go take a walk around the neighborhood. I watched it at night. I'm walking in the dark in my neighborhood to like try to get this out of my system. Still struggling to sleep, and part of me is like, "This is what you wanted, you know.
Yeah,
You did this to yourself. This
yeah.
is this is what you always want." And I'm like, when I I read certain books or certain short stories. The aforementioned Joe Lansdale, whose work I've always loved, and Lansdale's written some stuff where it's like, damn, that was pretty mean.
Yeah.
And it's like also, I knew that that's probably what he was going to do. I know he's very capable of that, and I set myself up for it. And if I'm struggling to sleep at night, this is what I was wanting to do.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes hard to explain to people who are just like not as into horror, because I'm a firm believer that everybody's into horror whether they realize it or not. Not literally everybody, obviously, but I do legitimately think 90% of people, even if they think they're not into horror stories.
Easily, Johnny, you ask anyone, any of your friends, name 5 of your favorite movies. 2 of them are going to be horror movies and they don't even know it. And these are the people that say, I do not like horror.
Not only that, a lot of their favorite movies that aren't horror stories have blatant horror elements in it.
100%.
If you're like, oh, I love Die Hard, guess what? Die Hard basically has straight up horror scenes in it. Like my old defunct podcast, and one of these days, hopefully I'll resurrect, but I did a whole episode that was like basically like the idea of fighting with fear. And I used Die Hard as the example of like, this is a horror situation. And there are horror moments in this. And this is like a movie that people like are like, oh no, it's just fun. And it's like, oh, it's my favorite action movie because this is like this. There are moments here where like the part of what makes it so great is that this would be scary as hell. And it's framed to be scary as hell. They're taking it seriously. This is part of why some of the sequels started falling off, because they didn't inject it with fear.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that this is why the Terminator series, some people would argue differently. Obviously, your tastes vary, but to me, the first 2 Terminator movies worked really well because there's so much horror in them. The first one's
one
just
is sci-fi horror.
It's just a straight horror movie.
Yeah.
It's just a flat out horror movie. The second one is more action oriented, but they're still being pursued by a changeling whose primary favorite weapon, is like knives that he makes out of his hands.
A shapeshifter.
And most of the shapeshifter that's going around stabbing people. Guess what? Like that's a horror scenario.
A horror movie.
There's old horror lore that's pretty much centered on this. So I firmly believe that most people are more into horror than they realize. But then for people who even like us that realize it, it's magnified that much more. And it's hard to explain, I think, when it's like I'm pursuing this sensation that will also, like you mentioned, keep me up at night. And my spouse has to tell me, come to bed. And it's like, just one more page, just a little bit more.
This brings us full circle around to what we were talking about, though, about this moment that has been going on for years now in horror, that there's so much great literature, horror literature out there. There's so much to choose from. And I love the fact that you're a big part of it. You really are. I mean, whether you want to cop to it or not, you're a big part of it. You're such a distinct and unique voice, and look, you're insanely talented, So keep it up, man. Keep it up.
Thanks. I mean, I've got ideas to spare. I will never run out of ideas. I'm confident of that. I've made as much peace as I can make with the idea that I'm going to die with stories in my head. If I could live to be 90, I will die with stories in my head. So my goal is to make sure, hopefully, if I'm fortunate enough, that I die with fewer stories left in my head than stories that I've put out in the world.
That
That's
should
all
be the goal. Yeah. Have the scales tip this way, not this way. And we'll all benefit from it, because I want those Johnny Compton short stories and novellas and novels. Which brings us to, let's talk, if we can, because you already announced it. Can we talk about the novella coming up?
Yes. It is through Shortwave, which is just a fantastic, I guess they're an indie publisher, but I think they've got a new deal with Simon & Schuster. So
yeah, they were indie. I don't know what we call them now, but they do great work. Yep.
Fantastic. And I've had some short stories published with them previously. We signed a deal to do my first novella. It's my first sci-fi horror story. I mentioned previously, I love sci-fi horror. It's should be coming out later this year, and if it doesn't come out on time, it's through no fault of the publisher. It'll be my fault because of delays I've had in the writing process, because I can get bogged down with realizing I'm trying to maybe do too much. As I've mentioned, I've when I get an idea, I'm like, let's throw it on there, and then it might not be until however many days or weeks later that I'm rereading and editing, and I'm like, is this too much? And there's a lot going on with this.
Okay.
To even try to summarize it to a certain extent, it's about an alien who comes to Earth promising to uplift humanity
Okay.
by giving us greater knowledge of ourself, basically giving us a complete understanding of our own bodies. Things like the fact that breathing is both autonomous and manual. Um, and what if you knew how to control your heartbeat at that level? What if you knew how to self-diagnose if you have a disease and things like that? What would actually happen in my story, at least, is that people basically just go insane and start trying to kill everyone around them that is not uplifted because they feel like they need some outlet to blame for the fact that they are going insane, that they can't withstand this level of knowledge, and they
Okay.
attack people that they perceive as ignorant. That is the simplest way to describe it. It's a kind of mid-apocalyptic story, sort of like space zombies.
And now
But
I
there
have
are
to wait for it. Great.
sorry, there are references to The Fly, the Philadelphia Experiment,
The
the
thing.
the Thing. The Thing definitely has a huge influence on it. The Ozzy Osbourne Black Sabbath song, Iron Man, which is a sci-fi horror story. If you listen to the lyrics, when I found that out, I was like, as a dude who grew up listening almost not exclusively but primarily to hip hop, came around to rock and roll a little bit later, opening my eyes up, and then it was like, this song is just this is a thing that I love hip hop, but hip hop isn't doing sci-fi horror stories. That's a
No, no.
cool rock thing, you know. This is what rock and roll can do. Every genre does things that other genres don't really do well. This is a rock and roll thing, and when I found that out, I was like, this is awesome. So there's references to that. It's packed with a lot of stuff. Hopefully, it takes some cool twists and turns, especially for a novella. I can't wait to unleash that on the world. Can't
When
wait.
does it come out?
It is currently scheduled for. I'm trying to get my timeline, my parlance of the publishing industry correct. I believe it will be considered fall of 2026, fall of this year. So
Okay.
it would be somewhere in probably the November December range.
All right. 100% going to have you back for that. Will you come back?
Dude, I will talk to you. We are like connected. We are
Simpatico.
tethered now. Yes, yes.
All right, but I can't
Whenever you
wait
want me
that
to come
long.
back.
I can't wait that long. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Okay. We're both completely down with sci-fi horror. Will you come back? I will. I'll look. I'll hit you up. I'll give us a little breathing room. Will you come back in a month or two and we both pick our top 5 sci-fi horror and we'll just cut it up?
Hell yeah. Let's
Let's do it.
do it.
Let's do
Let's
it, Johnny.
talk about it. Oh, hell yeah, man. It's so this novella it's titled Chimera Skin,
Love it.
and it's got me like probably the most nervous I've been since I wrote The Spite House, just because
Seriously?
it's my first time really truly writing sci-fi horror. I think I've had some short stories that probably technically qualify, but very vaguely. This is
Okay.
like much more intensely sci-fi horror. It's loaded with a lot of references that are totally unnecessary, but I'm doing it kind of for the love, just for me. So for people that character names, and there's a secret reference I buried in there to Stephen King's The Jaunt, and just all
Oh,
these other wonderful, just dumb things that I put in there just for the love of it, because I love sci-fi horror that much. So that's what's got me so nervous about it, though, is that I want to do justice to this. To me, there's something beautiful, but I don't want to waste too much of this right now, right? We want to save it for the episode.
okay.
But I just want to say, one of the reasons why I love sci-fi horror so much is because the degree of difficulty, I think, in scaring people with something so remote. What I find so impressive, one of the many things I find so impressive about Alien, it came out at this era when the other big scary movies of the 70s were like The Exorcist. Well, people believe in demonic possession.
Hmm.
Amityville Horror. People believe in haunted houses.
Yeah.
Jaws. Sharks obviously are very much a real thing. You can go on down the list, all the big horror movies of that era. Halloween. Well, guess what? Like psycho killers stalking the night, definitely. Mass murdering serial killers definitely exist.
It exists. Yeah.
Alien is set on a spaceship in the future. You can't get more removed. This is not something where you're like, I'm scared of this because it could happen to me. This is definitely not going to happen to you. And it still scared the hell out of people. It made people faint in the theater.
And then creates one of the most iconic creatures to ever
Yes.
grace the screen.
That again is it's set as far away from actual planet Earth as you can like basically think of, and somehow was giving people nightmares and freaking people out so much in the theater. That to me is like you've done something. Even my story, frankly, I can't claim to even pursue that because I have an alien coming to Earth. So at least you could say, well, like there is a fear. There are people who believe aliens have come to Earth. This is the film Alien is removed from any belief system. It's removed from anything relatable.
Yeah.
There's there's nothing about it that should be able to get under your skin in that way. So you're operating from that level of degree of difficulty, and you still achieved what they achieved is unreal to me. It's
Perfection.
unreal.
Perfection.
It's amazing.
I can't wait for us to talk
Oh
about
yeah,
sci-fi
let's
horror.
dig
Oh,
into
we're
it.
gonna
Let's dig
nerd
into
out
it.
so bad. All right. Well, look, I hate to do it, but we got to wrap up. I
I
told you
know.
when the sun starts going down, I got to call it. Johnny Compton. The novel is dead first. There's going to be an absolute love letter of a review in Macabre Daily. This was, I mean, I got to be honest. There's no better way to spend a day than talking to somebody, making a new friend, and this was fantastic.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm making a new friend. Exactly. I'm like,
Thank you so
oh,
much.
I found a kinship. Right. Like that's so awesome.
All right, the one thing I'm going to ask though, are you going to StokerCon in Pittsburgh this summer? Will you be there?
Every intention of being
Okay. I am going to be coming in hot with a gigantic hug. Please do not crush my little bird bones when you return that hug.
there. You know what? I feel like I do a pretty good job of like I've because I am a big dude, so I've mastered the art of like hug people, but don't try to envelop them
Johnny, I'm
as much as
5'7"
possible.
on a good day. Don't snap me in half, but you got a hug coming your way, and the first beer's on me, my friend.
Oh, we'll debate that part, but sure, absolutely.
All right, look, go have a fantastic night. This was an absolute joy. Like I said, give us about a month or two. Have you back around March. March, beginning of April. Start thinking about. You probably already have your five, but start thinking about your five, and we'll schedule. And look, no time limit. We're just gonna cut it up. We're gonna have so much fun, and yeah, then we're just gonna talk sci-fi horror.
It's awesome. Can't wait. Let's do it.
You got it. Everybody go out and buy Dead First. It releases. Johnny, help me out. Is it the 3rd or the 10th? It's the 10th, right?
The 10th, February 10th.
February 10th, look for the review in Macabre Daily. This interview will post the week before to get everybody a little excited about the novel. And look, it's 100% guarantee it's going to scare the socks off of you. This is such a good novel. Go out and get it, people.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
I can't wait to have you back. Take care.